Welcome to the Seller Roundtable e-commerce coaching and business strategies with Andy Arnott and Amy Wees.
So we've talked a lot of concept here, but I would love to know, like, step by step, like if you're going to launch a new product, kind of what are maybe some 3 to 5 simple steps that maybe people should go down on that path to hopefully, get a successful product launch and on the branding standpoint.
Yeah, so assuming that the product launch is a brand new brand launch, they don't have any other products, we're not doing a sub brand or anything like that. The first thing you want to do is you want to create your identity and your structure. So that is creating your framework. There is nothing more important than that. Now, when you're first starting out, don't try and get too detailed. So keep it simple. You're going to have a general idea of who, and your framework's going to define for you who you are, what you do, who you do it for, why it matters to you. Those are your frameworks. So they're all going to be educated guesses the first time around, right? You do the best you can with what you've got because it's all in theory, it's all a hypothesis. You got to throw it out there. The second thing you want to work on, but you want to have a framework for that. The second thing you want to work on is going to be your experience mapping. So map out some of your relations, so some of your customer interactions and some of your customer journeys. So look at some of the places that your campaigns are going out. So let's just say they go to your Amazon listing. What do they do? Are your FAQs robust enough? Are your photos giving them a 360 view? Do they see do you have a sizing chart? Do you have, what are you doing from an experience mapping standpoint that's going to give them what they need? Mapping it out point by point. So whether you are on a digital experience or you are in an in-person experience, we map it out. I open the doors. What do I smell? What do I see? Do I get greeted? How much space is between me and the first rack? Do I feel like this, or do I have room to breathe, right? Everything is laid out. So even if you think about a retail store, right? When you walk in, what's right in front of you? Like a ton of stuff that you can't get through. It's all racks. Why? Because they are pushing you to the outer edges, because they don't want you to go straight to the counter to pay your credit card or to return something. They want you to walk all the way around the store, find something else that you like before you get to that cashier desk. So you've got a purchase in hand before you leave. And that's all done intuitively. Like there's no yellow arrows that are like, you must go this way, but they've set up the experience in such a way that you're just you follow their intention and you create that. And you do that in a digital experience too, with your listing, with your website. And so the second part of that is defining, and again, keep it simple. You don't have to define every single experience. Pick the top 2 or 3 that are going to get you the most traction, before purchase and immediately after purchase. How do you nurture that sale? And then the third part is the culture. And that is getting engagement with the brand, your marketing campaigns, how you're going, to message yourself and position yourself. And so if you can tap into those 3 areas in that first year in a very, simplistic, keep it simple, less is more. The less you do, the more you can measure, the more time you have to measure and track what your data is, so that you can optimize it for the next year. Those would be my first 3 places to go.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I absolutely hate I call them the upsell corral, like that you have to go through to get to the checkout. And especially if you have kids, you're just like, you want to wring people's necks because they're just like, can I get the gum? Can I get that? You're like, no, we're leaving.
Yes. And what's super cool about that is, so like when you're doing that, you can measure. So for instance, like say you're on say you're doing a trip, like a phone wire, right? Like you're doing that trip wire where you go in and, you get this like super awesome book for 97 cents plus shipping, right? And so you click on it, you're like, yeah, I'm getting this book. And then you get that upsell. Hey, did you want to take the workshop or the video workshop for an extra $100? And you're like, okay, maybe. The first one, either you take it or you don't, but you're not annoyed, it's expected. But 7 upsells later, you're like, oh my God, forget it. I'm just Xing out of this. And so that's what this first year is a testing. Like, where does your customer fall? Where are their boundaries? At what point is it, oh, that's really helpful. This is a great accessory for what I bought. And where does it turn into, oh my God, leave me alone. You've already got, like, I just want to get out of here. I've been trying to pay you and give you my money for 10 minutes now, and you won't let me do it until I agree to give you all of it. And so there's kind of like figuring that sequencing out and measuring it.
That was the genius though of Russell Brunson and Clickfunnels, right?
Yeah.
Is he charges you on each step.
Yeah.
So step one, you get charged. Like people don't realize this. You put your credit card info, you get charged. Then the upsell, they've already got your credit card info. So they go, oh yeah, that's cool. Boom. You're already charged. Like each
And
one
then
of
the
those
VIP
steps.
concierge service,
Right.
yeah,
Like
it just
it's genius. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why Clickfunnels, so many people, started using it. I mean, it's not as, great of a concept now that everybody's kind of copied it and iterated on it, but it's crazy how they mastered that step-by-step upsell, which was very simple, but one of those things that nobody really thought of before that. So
a reinvention of the football phone.
Right. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
his book, how he talks about selling, I think it was like a potato gun or something that he, like his first product. And that's kind of how they got the idea for ClickFunnels. If you haven't read his books, they're on a marketing standpoint, I would say, untouchable.
Yeah.
So
They're pretty on point.
yeah. So one of the things I really, this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make on a branding standpoint is naming one of the most basic things is naming your company or your products, right? I mean, you'll get people, number one, they'll either get too specific. They'll say like, organic dog biscuits or something, being a pet brand, but then like all of a sudden people buying the dog biscuits are like, hey, I would love if you have dog, little treats that like freshen their breath, or like all these kind of offshoots. And you've kind of already started by painting yourself into this box.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm on the right track here. Cause for me, when I go to brands, one of the most important things I look for is short, right? Is it short? Is it like one word or a couple of words, as short as possible? Can I get the domain is another one that people don't think of.
Yes.
And then also it's like, is it too specific? Like Nike can sell anything because it's not like, it's not if they, right, it's not if they call themselves like Northern Washington, Oregon Sports Accessory Network or what, it's like, then people are like, well, wait a minute, what does this company do? It's just like, super easy to remember, super simple, and a lot of room to grow and pivot, because as a new brand, you want the ability to be nimble. At least that's how I think. Am I on the right track there, or what can how should people navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we do when we're working, especially when we're working with new brands and startup brands, right? Because most of the people who are entrepreneurs these days, are creative in a way that we have not seen in decades past, right? These are true creatives, these are true makers. And so we know that one item that they've invented is not the end, right? There's going to be more. And so they may not know what it is yet. We may not know what it is yet. But what we always do in the beginning is we have a visioning strategy session. So we say, okay, let's look at and explore the brand scope. So you're not committing, you're not signing anything in blood, like we're just exploring your brand scope. Where could this go? And if it were to go here, just kind of mapping out what the scenarios would be so that we know, okay, what we need to consider when we think of a brand. Then it's just like you said, you do your domain search, of course. You want to do a USTP search too, just to make sure, general trademark search, you can do it for free, just to kind of eliminate maybe some ideas that you have that are already taken. Before you finalize on that with your designer, you're going to want to make sure your attorney has a look at it and clears it. But generally, just a precursory look, you can do a free search for yourself relatively quickly. But yeah, the things that you want to think about are, do I have plans to expand, or will I always just sell cat collars? Am I committing to this? If I say cat collars, that's it. That's what I do. And then something that is phonetically easy. So there are weird words out there like Yahoo or Google or Nike that like maybe they sound natural and normal to us now, but back when they were first coming up, not so, like, what the heck, And so, but they were all phonetically easy. So when you look at brand consistency, one of the things that can harm you is if everybody's pronouncing it a different way, you don't really know you're talking about the same thing, or people will hesitate to pronounce it because they're afraid of mispronouncing it. And so they're not speaking or talking about it or bringing it up. So we want to make sure that phonetically Even if it's a word that isn't commonly known, phonetically we would know how to say it. It's you feel comfortable sounding it out, right? You also want to look at different things like, obviously the length of it, where you would want to put it. So, whenever we're testing out names and logos, we do a lot of mock-ups, and we do a lot of like live mock-ups and stagnant mock-ups. So like, what would it look like if you have a clothing line and it's a 12 to 15 letter, brand name, and you're trying to squeeze it on a clothing tag, like that ain't gonna work. So just so we do a lot of mock-ups. If we'll try out a sign and a logo, and like, what does it look like if we're going 60 miles an hour? Like, what does that look like before we commit to something? If we know that this is, where are we going to put it in the real world? And does it make sense? Does it look good? Does it, what's readability on it? All of those kinds of things. And then of course, you want to have your attorney make sure that you're good to go before you pay a fortune in design, right? And that's a good start. Now later, as your brand grows, you'll come to a point, some brands, where they'll stretch out, they'll get to their limits. And that's when you start having the conversation of your brand model. And so that is, how do we organizationally structure this? Is this a new line, or is this a sub brand? Or how are we going to organize this so that it makes sense? Because the worst thing we can do is overcomplicate it for our customers. If it's, you've got a few seconds for them to get it, otherwise they're moving on. And so really understanding from a forward-facing standpoint, how do we organize our products together? How do we organize our lines? How do we organize our offers in a way that they get it and they get it quick? There's no confusion. There's not a lot of, well, what's the difference between this and this? There's very clear distinctions.
That's something I wish I would have known too, like earlier, because I picked and I think Andy's talked about this too. Like, we both like picked bad brand names in the beginning. Mine could be spelled so many different ways. And so I always have to spell it whenever I give people my brand name. I always have to spell it, because it's a word that I made up, right? So it is just like, oh man, yeah.
Or sometimes what we see is, a lot of times people wanted a name and they wanted it real bad, but it was taken. And so then they intentionally replaced consonants that had double sounds so that it worked. But then, so like technically it was open, but then like, my response is always, well, there's a reason it's open. That makes, like, you can't, like, it's really hard to read, and you might not be.
And now everybody's going to the competitor's website because they're spelling it the right way. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it can kind of backfire on you. So be flexible with your names. Don't be flexible. There's
and then the other thing to think about is, a couple $100 for a domain name in the grand scheme of things is not that big a deal. If somebody already owns the domain, but it's for sale and it's a little extra money, it might be worth it. The other thing you have to check too, which a lot of people miss this step, is your local business registry, right? Because then you might register a name, a trademark nationally might be fine. You might have the domain, but then locally there might be somebody who's using something similar, that could get you in trouble. I just started watching Silicon Valley, and like I think it's like the second or third episode, like the app name or the company name is like Pied Piper or something like that, and everybody in the show hates it and they make fun of it. One of the episodes, he like goes to this farmer who owns the name and like tries to buy it from him. Then he finds out that, he thinks he's this like rich Silicon Valley billionaire. So then he says, screw you, you tried to pull one over on me. Anyway, it was very relevant to this conversation in terms of branding. So anyway, that just top of mind because I just saw it. One of the other things that we love to discuss on the show is, we do a lot of e-commerce and Amazon, but, because Amy and I have grown businesses and you're growing your business, I love to hear that journey, because there's so many mistakes that we've made and you've probably made that we can share with others to skip over those mistakes, or at least have a little better understanding on how to navigate them. So as your business grows, kind of what tips or what things are you learning as you scale your business that you could maybe share with others?
This is probably something that everybody says, but I think that it's so important, you can't hear it enough, is understanding your value as a CEO. a lot of times, like small business owners, it's like a badge of honor to DIY everything. And it is actually the worst idea. And I speak from, because I've done it, and, there's no judgment there. It's all experience speaking, that there are a lot of things that will cost you more to do it yourself than it would just to pay someone else to do it, i.e. trademark attorney, i.e. bookkeeper and CPA, business attorney. There are some things you just don't want to be responsible for if it goes south, right? You just want to know that you paid somebody who has the license, who has, the credentials to do it, that will assume liability for a mistake, that especially starting out when everything's so new to you. Could you figure out bookkeeping? Sure. Could you figure it out in the next 3 days that you'll need to have it figured out so that you can properly invoice and pay your sales tax and know if you need to charge sales tax because they bought it in another country or another state, and how does that work? Yeah, probably not. And those are the things that in fines and time and audits and, anything that you do, even a trademark attorney, well, we've been using it. The domain was clear. I was like, well, yeah, but the trademark wasn't. And what now? You invested in a logo, or you've got a cease and desist, or they're coming after you for damages, is so much worse than like the $500 attorney meeting where they just ran it for, like the couple thousand. It ends up. So I guess for me, that is the big lesson. And it's written on Post-its everywhere, like, don't cheap out, like, just don't cheap out. When, if there's somebody, like, there's a reason that these people get paid so much to do it, and it's because it's important and they need to be doing those things. And even little things that you don't think about, so social media is one of them. I don't, because technically Canva's so easy to work, but mine never looked as good as the social media managers.
And it
know. Probably, yeah. And it takes me like 3 hours to do what they can do in 15
media.
minutes.
Yes.
What? And so when you think about that, like, what's your time worth? So, whatever your hourly, whatever you pay yourself an hour times 3 hours versus the, $15, $20 you're paying someone else to do it times the 15 minutes that it took them to do it.
And not only that, it's also probably keeping you from scaling faster. So sometimes we don't want to reach deeper into our pockets. We want to really, and there's nothing wrong with bootstrapping, right? But sometimes we don't want to reach deeper into our pockets. We want to stay super lean, but that actually keeps us from growing faster. Where if we had invested in hiring that social media person and spent a little bit more money, but then put that out. I do that a lot with private label on coaching calls. We'll look at, they won't want to spend money on inventory, but they keep running out of stock, and it's actually costing them more than if they put that money down on that inventory, and we'll project it out. And it's just like, okay, guys, sometimes it's good to stay lean, but other times it's like, it's actually costing you what your scalability. I mean, it's crazy. So that's great advice.
Yeah. One of the things that we always do, it's a rule now in the office. Anytime we have a big spend question come up, we sit down all together and we make a list. And the questions that we ask ourselves are 2. Is this an expense or is this an investment? Is there an ROI on this? And then the second question we ask is, as far as like, should we do it or should we not do it, is what's the cost of action versus the cost of inaction? Because sometimes, like, we see the cost, like we know, to do this SEO spend, we're going to be spending, $3,000, and we see that number and it hurts. But then we never really look at the other side of that, which is, well, what's the cost of inaction? How much am I losing in sales because I'm not putting myself out there in marketing? And so, like, sometimes it's just that kind of more balanced perspective instead of that fear-based, like, letting go of money mentality that, as a small business owner who's bootstrapping, it's that kind of a human reaction that you sometimes just kind of have to shake yourself out of, or get help shaking yourself out of
I love that you're bringing your team into it too, and you're helping them understand that, hey, these are our resources and we need to use them wisely. Let's make this decision together based on that criteria. That's awesome. So the other question that we'd love to ask is, what are you reading or listening to that is keeping you motivated? Did you read a book recently that you're just like, yes, this really stuck with me, or any podcasts that you're listening to? What is it right now that's motivating you?
Yeah. Okay. So I love to read. So I'm going to give you 2 books. 2 of them I've read before that I like to reread them because it's just kind of, I feel like you always get new stuff. One of them is Traction by Gino. I like his last name.
Gino Wickman?
Yeah, Wickman.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Wickman.
Yeah.
I love that book. I can read that book all the time. I think there's always nuggets in there. And it's crazy because every time right now I'm audibling it, but every time you read it, you find, like, you think you implement it and then you just find ways to better implement it, or ways that you weren't executing it in just quite the right way. So that's a great book. Any small business owner needs to read that one. Another one that we just finished reading as a team. So we have like a team book club. And so the other one that we're reading as a team is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a great negotiating book.
Yes, that is a great book.
That
Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Yep.
It was great. And it's such an easy read too. And he has these like great hostage negotiator examples to give you. So you're just like riveted at the edge of your seat the whole time. So you're getting good business negotiating tactics.
And you should negotiate everything in business. So that's, no matter what it is. So it's a really good, skill to have in business. So it looks like you're looking for another one.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's the story of Ford. So it talks about it's the story of how Ford did their rebounded after 2008. So they talk about Mullally, the guy who got Boeing back after 9/11 and helped them, save their skin. So this is the same guy comes in and does the same thing for Ford back in 2008, and that's the one I'm reading now. But I can't remember for the life of me. It's the Ford book. I don't know.
Well, I think we'll be able to
the bookshelf to see if I can grab the name of it. But yeah, those are the 3 that we just did.
Amazing. I love those are the first 2 that you named were really just great things. And I'm going to go back and finish Traction because I got it started and now I'm going to go finish it. Exactly. So we've come to the last question and most important question of the entire show. And that's all of the people who have been riveted and want to reach out to you. I know Marcia was asking like, hey, do you do packaging? What do you do? So all of the people that want to reach out to you for help with their branding, how do they get in contact with you? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so I can stick it in the chat if that's helpful, but you can go to brandauthor.com, which is our website, and you can just book a discovery call. We do free consultations for people just, to see what your needs might be, what your scope might be, maybe give you a few pointers. You can also email me at zahra.cruzan@brandauthor.com. I'm happy to answer questions or point you in the right direction for somebody that we might know that might be a really good match. And then of course there's Instagram. You can always DM me there if email's too old school.
Well, I will put everything in the chat for everyone, and we'll also have that in the show notes. And just thank you so much, Sarah, for being on today. And branding is such an impactful thing for us to understand. And I love the way that you make it simple or simpler. It's not simple, but simpler.
It is. It's a lot of work, but it's pretty simple once you get it down.
Love it.
All right.
Thank you so much for being here. And as usual, folks, thank you for joining us live. All of you who are in here in the Zoom meeting, you're going to get to ask questions after the fact if you stick around. For those of you who haven't joined us, every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, sellerroundtable.com/live. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. I think I might have to do some kind of contest where, maybe I'll shave my head or my beard or something like that if we get like an X number of reviews in a certain month or something. I don't know. What do you think, Amy? We're going to have to brainsbrainstorm on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, make sure you do that.
I think we let the listeners pick we'll do a poll.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Andy has to get a tattoo or something.
I don't know. That has to get the approval from the wife too. I don't want to upset the villagers here. That would not be a good thing for me.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us live on the Seller Roundtable. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for live Q&A and bonus content after the recording at sellerroundtable.com. Sponsored by the ultimate software tool for Amazon sales and growth, sellerseo.com and amazingathome.com.